Yes. Hell is Us. That's a game most people haven't really heard of, nor seen lots of things about, much less played it. Which is unfortunate given the game's intriguing story and zero hand-holding, which helps you feel like an actual adult who is playing a game that lets you figure things out on your own, instead of, holding your hand every step of the way, like most modern games do these days. However, I can see how this game is of the not everyone's cup of tea variety of games, as things I've found enjoyable, others have already found annoying and deal breakers when it came to them actually buying the game and playing it for themselves. So let's get into what one can, or cannot, expect from Hell is Us. I will not go into details, nor will I reveal the entire story, as there are a few twists that, though predictable for this type of game, are worth exploring on your own should you choose to give this game a chance after all. So you play as Remy, a peacemaker working for the ON, the game's version of the UN essentially, who only did so in order to get back into his home country, Hadia. Remy was smuggled out of the country by his mother when he was still a child, and his only memory and connection to his home and his parents is a necklace and the memory of his mother putting him in the back of a truck and telling him never to come back to Hadia. After managing to get into the war-torn country, his quest is simple. He only wants to find his parents. However, he soon realizes that Hadia's problems run deeper than just the unrelenting war between the two factions of the Palomists and the Sabinians. The two have been at each other's throats for the country's entire history, essentially taking turns subjugating and committing atrocities on one another. Hadia, however, is a special place. It is isolated from the rest of the world, and as it turns out, creatures that have no connection to any life form on the planet have shown up, and as you will soon find out, it is not the first time this has or will happen. They are essentially harbingers of a great calamity. They appear when an especially atrocious act of violence takes place, which subsequently creates a time loop from which countless of these creatures emerge to terrorize and unalive anyone in the time loop's vicinity. The creatures seem especially sensitive to certain human emotions, but in this game only the emotions of grief, terror, ecstasy, and rage are explored. You also find out that there was a special order tasked with protecting Hadia from these creatures and preventing the calamity called the Vigil. The Vigil was, and still is, comprised by both Palomists and Sabinians, indicating its importance since members of both factions were willing to set their differences aside for the greater good. In the meantime, Remy also finds out that, of course, there are people who are also trying to weaponize the time loops and the creatures. So after finding out what happened to his parents, which don't worry, I'm not going to spoil, he then promises to take care of the calamity as well by triggering the failsafe that will stop this from happening. So you then embark on this journey across the country to explore ancient ruins, piece the mystery together, and find all the necessary things you will need to trigger the failsafe. Along the way, you encounter various people in need of your help that you can choose to either help or just ignore. And you also have the option of sealing the many time loops that you will come across during the journey across the country. And that's pretty much it for the story. As far as the combat is concerned, I've seen many compare it to a Souls-like game due to the fact that your health and stamina are linked, and some have even said that the combat is challenging, which just no. I have to be completely honest here because while the combat does feel very difficult and weird at first, once you get the hang of it, it becomes fairly easy and honestly kind of repetitive and dare I say boring and tedious at times, because you will eventually find a combination of powers that works for literally all levels of enemies, and you will end up doing the same combo over and over again in order to progress a bit faster, since the complete lack of hand-holding, while refreshing, is also a bit of annoying since you will do a lot of walking back and forth in an area, as well as from and to different locations many times. Which brings me to the, in my opinion, refreshing mechanic of the game that makes you actually play the game and not just go through it as a quest checklist. There is no map, there is no quest tracking, and unfortunately not teleporting either. Let's start with the lack of a map. There is of course a map of the country, which you can see when you choose to leave an area and travel to another, but specific areas do not have their own maps. You will have to rely on people's instructions on how to find a specific house, a specific location, a specific person, and so on. Which is fine at first until you get different directions to different people and locations in the same town. There are also areas that are so confusing that you will end up wandering around for a while before you make any progress. Fear not, however, because there does come a point when you have walked by the same places so many times that you learn all the areas of the game like the back of your hand. But until you get to that point, navigating the different areas can get extremely frustrating. The fact you can't teleport between save locations is also kind of annoying as well, as you spend most of your time literally walking around from one side of the map to the other. Though thankfully, you are allowed to at least teleport back to your vehicle in order to leave the area. The fact that unless you have sealed the time loop in the area, enemies keep respawning when you leave and come back makes the walking around all the more annoying, because you will have to keep fighting the creatures as well every single time you leave and come back to the area. So that takes even more time, and I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but trust me, I am not. I wish I was, honestly, because for example, you could be near the end of the game and happen upon some random item, and then you will remember, oh yeah, that little kid in the literally very first location of the game mentioned this, so he probably wants this. So then you have to travel there, walk all the way to the kid, then travel back to your vehicle, and then back to wherever you were before and walk some more. And if you haven't sealed the time loop, you will have to keep fighting enemies in between all this as well. The constant drone and driving loading scenes whenever you leave and go to an area do not particularly help with this issue either. So with a lack of a map, how do you find the things and people and locations you need to find, you may ask? Well, you need to keep your eyes and ears peeled for clues you can see around, read on the walls or texts, or hear from NPCs. All quests, both main and side quests, which by the way are called good deeds in the game, are all acquired, completed, or failed in this exact way. This, unfortunately, means you will fail one or multiple good deeds here and there without even realizing it. Maybe because you heard an NPC mention something, but it didn't click that they were talking about X place, item, or person when you talked to them. Or you did remember, but didn't have the item yet. Or got the item first and then didn't know what to do with it. Or you might have even started to do that side quest, got distracted by another one on your way there, or turned off the game for the night, and then when you turned it back on the next or the day after that, forgot about what quest you were on altogether. Or you simply never came across the item, the clues, or the person at all, and didn't realize that there was even a side quest related to any of those until it was too late. So the lack of hand-holding is amazing, however, I feel like it was poorly executed, as it seems and feels unfair that just because you can play the game for a day or two and forget what you were in the middle of, then that automatically means you will fail that quest altogether now. And this was so easily solvable. For example, they could make it so once you've explored an area, you can fast travel to it, or at least fast travel from one save location to another, or have Remy, I don't know, keep notes on the current quest he's on, but you're only allowed to keep track of that one particular quest, so that when you come back to the game, you're not at a complete loss about what was happening and what quest you're on and who you were supposed to be doing a good deed for, and so on. Because as things currently are in the game, it literally feels like the game is punishing you for, daring to turn it off for the night and going to sleep, or not being able to get back into the game for a couple of days. It just felt so unfair and unnecessarily punishing. Not because you lack the skills to get through the quest, or you keep dying and failing or whatever, but because you couldn't play the game for a couple of days and forgot what you were doing, which is perfectly normal for a working adult. The inability to load back to a previous save and try to redo just that specific quest is also frustrating, because the game will literally force you to replay it in its entirety, even if you just want to redo that one specific good deed that you failed. For example, I failed one good deed and felt so horrible about it, but when I realized the game was essentially forcing me to replay literally everything up until that point, I got so frustrated and disappointed that I literally just turned it off for the night. A game should not force you to replay it in this way. In my opinion, a game should make you want to replay it just because you enjoyed it that much and or you want to see all the different outcomes. And even if you think, well, I'll just die, just so the game automatically takes me back to the save before I fail the quest. Well, think again, because even when you die and the game does in fact take you back to the last save location, your progress is not lost. So the game is in fact punishing, like people say, but not in a fulfilling or meaningful way whatsoever. However, I did still find it somewhat refreshing that a game was so bold and unapologetically harsh in this regard, considering the callous and harsh reality of violence, war, and their consequences that the game is exploring. All these kind of felt on brand for the game, to be honest, even though they were incredibly frustrating. But the mechanic, or lack thereof, that frustrated me to no ends was the fact that Remy cannot jump. The amount of times I thought I wouldn't have to walk all this way or look for levers to pull or caves or alternate entrances into a place if he could just jump over a not even knee-high wall or fence were just way too many. And honestly, not even jump over, but literally if he just stepped over the little fence, he would get into the area that we are so desperately trying to get into. Or why Cappy, the drone helping you, can't just, lift you up and over a wall. Mind you, Cappy can lift you up in order to attack enemies, but even when you use this ability, the knee-high obstacles remain an annoying hindrance for some inexplicable reason that frustrated me to no end. The game explores the cycle of human violence and the horrors of war, but with a supernatural twist on top of it all. So the atmosphere is dark, gloomy, and at times, honestly, quite heart-wrenchingly depressing. I felt myself getting sad, angry, shocked, and honestly just heartbroken due to many of the things I saw, I heard, and read throughout the game. The supernatural aspect of the game reminded me of the movie Annihilation, so I wasn't really surprised when I found out that the game was heavily inspired by it. There were also times when the game also had an American Horror Story feel to it, if that makes sense, like the creatures and how they moved, for example. But again, it all felt on brand for a game like this and the themes it was exploring. Now, as a person who focuses on story and characters and so on, as far as the characters are concerned, I can't say I was impressed, nor did I particularly feel any connection to any of the main characters. Ironically enough, I felt incredibly sorry and moved and wanted to help as many of the NPCs as possible, which I felt was weird because usually the opposite happens in games. You usually get extremely invested in the protagonist's story and just don't really care as much about the other characters. But in this case, the exact opposite happened for me. And I think I know what the problem here is, because it feels like, well, they chose to make Remy a sociopath, right? At least according to his military file, in order to explain his supposed complete detachment from his emotions and why he's so goal-oriented and doesn't talk much and doesn't seem to care about much else. While at the same time, the game rewards you for all your good deeds, and the protagonist's literal motive being his emotional connection to his home country and parents. So this felt incredibly oxymoronic to me. I get them potentially trying to make Remy this blank canvas that the player can use to reflect their own emotions about the situation onto him, but just why? This isn't an RPG. I am not playing my own character, I am playing as Remy and experiencing his story and these events through his eyes. So telling me he's supposed to be one thing while calling on me to do things that feel completely contradictory to what this character is supposed to be felt just weird and nonsensical to me. And to be honest, I'm sorry, but Remy has got to be one of the most forgettable protagonists in a while, for me at least. And the problem here is not that the game is forcing you to play as this particular character, because I've played action games before where I was asked to just play the protagonist's story and view the characters and events unfolding in the story through their eyes and not mine. And I still remember as well as love said protagonists. Remy, however, felt like a soulless, passive, and just a blank canvas of essentially no substance. That is just forgettable, to be honest. Honestly, I will remember Capi, the drone, and Tanya, a reporter who's also helping you, as well as some of the NPCs, much more than I will Remy in a few years' time, which is not particularly good, especially considering he's supposed to be the main character of the game. So the question here is, would I recommend this to someone? Well, it depends on both the person's preferences as well as their budget. For example, I got the game for 45 euros, I think, during a sale at a local gaming shop, and I enjoyed my time with it for that price. But would I pay the full 60 or even worse, the 70 deluxe edition euros for it? No, I would not. I definitely wouldn't. The game is very impressive in many ways, but you can tell it was clearly made with it becoming a series at some point in the future. Even the ending is so abrupt and weird, I literally didn't realize the game was ending, to be honest. I thought we for sure had another act or something. The after credit scene also clearly indicates the devs want to make this into a franchise or give it a sequel at the very least. So the game comes to this abrupt and not really fulfilling end, and you're just left sitting there thinking, wait, that was it? The mechanics are also not for everyone, as they require a lot of patience and time to get used to, and even then, you will still find yourself frustrated at times. The line between realistic and absolutely tedious gets blurred in the game, and I get how some will not be able to go through with such mechanics at all, or will eventually get bored and drop the game altogether halfway through the game, for example, because of these mechanics. However, because the story is somewhat intriguing, and in my opinion, it is worth a one and done playthrough, my advice would be this. If you like the first few Resident Evil and Silent Hill games with a mix of Dead Rising on top of it, I guess, then buy it during a sale and enjoy your time. If you don't like such games, either don't buy it at all or try the demo or watch some gameplay first before going through with your purchase. And if you do end up playing it, then do quests the minute you get them. Don't think you will remember to do them later on, and make sure you're finished with the quest at hand before turning off your game for the day. Either that, or just follow a guide, I guess, so as not to miss out on a good deed by mistake, which will eventually frustrate you to no end and make you just so annoyed that you potentially give up on the game altogether. Unless, of course, you just don't care about doing everything and anything in the game, then just focus on the main story, I guess, which will be quite short if you just do that, I mean, but it is intriguing enough to keep you engaged and interested. Though, with the so far seemingly low sales, I don't think we will be getting a sequel, unfortunately, but if you wait for a sale and get into the game for the simple standalone fun of it all, it can in fact be an enjoyable and entertaining story and experience. Also, side note, if you don't like solving puzzles, don't even bother trying it, because there's puzzles for literally everything in the game. In other words, if you don't really have anything else to play and are in the mood for a short but intriguing story and see the game on sale, I would recommend getting it. But paying the full price for it, or even worse, the deluxe edition price for it, just no.